So it's been a pretty slow generation to get started, a lot of that having to do with the limited stock that's available for the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5. For the first year and a half or so of these systems being out, we haven't even seen them in stores. So yeah, a very odd time right now going from the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One to these newer systems. But it does look like we're starting to see developers maybe move on completely from this previous generation. And based on what Sony said, I do think looking at 2023 is when we're going to see things really start to get moving. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Let's head over here. This just to start with Gotham Knights. They did announce that the game will not ship on the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. It is going to be a PS5, Xbox Series, and PC game only, which when they first announced the game, they did have the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One logos up. However, according to them, they said they wanted to provide players with the best possible gameplay experience. The game will release on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, not being playable on the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One consoles. And I do wonder in this case, if the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 versions, while they may exist, kind of similar to what we see with Cyberpunk 2077, where it was just, basically unplayable at times, would the frame rate be pretty poor for Gotham Knights on, say, the base Xbox One or the base PlayStation 4? But maybe they work fine on the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro, and in their case, they don't want to put a product out there that doesn't work well enough across the board. Like, they're not just going to release a PS4 Pro or an Xbox One X version, so we'll just kind of cut those out and just release it on now the current gen, although a lot of people still refer to it as next gen because the systems are still so hard to come by, right? But I kind of looked at this and said, okay, that at least makes sense in that regard, if that is the case, because what's the point in releasing it if it's going to run like how Cyberpunk 2077 did on those older platforms? Now, today we had some other news, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this in Newswave because there is a strange caveat to this one. However, Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown is delayed to 2023, and they are canceling the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions. I think a lot of games that find their way into 2023, you'll probably see this. The PS4, the Xbox One version will kind of be left behind if they have been announced. And publicly anyway, because you could have been working on them internally and you don't even announce that the game was going to be for those platforms. But you look into 2023, we're coming up on 10 years of the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And eventually you're going to be moving away from them with the PS5 and the Xbox Series starting to rack up more and more sales and building up that install base. In fact, take a look over on here. This is Ars Technica. But it has to do with Sony's latest report for their fiscal year. It wasn't very good for Sony when it came to the number of PlayStation 5 systems that they got out this previous fiscal year at 11.5 million PlayStation 5 systems. Not exactly the number they wanted to get to. They had to lower their expectations, I believe, twice this previous fiscal year. However, the fiscal year we're in now that will end March 2023, the last day they are on the 31st, they're looking to have out another 18 million PlayStation 5 systems. And Sony says they're pretty confident that they'll be able to have that many systems shipped at that time, on top of the roughly 19 million PlayStation 5s they have out now. So at that time, we'll be sitting around 37 to 38 million PlayStation 5 systems that have shipped. And I sort of think going into 2023, as the chip shortage hopefully starts to alleviate somewhat, and I know the Intel CEO mentioned that it could go into 2024, but that did seem like, okay, we believe it will. Things could hopefully work out as we go into 2023. And the fact that I'm seeing sales, or prices, I should say, on sales for these PS5 and the Xbox Series start to come down on places like eBay in the secondhand market tells me that resellers are maybe not getting the returns they want and they're moving on, which means we're going to start seeing them hopefully show up just MSRP on eBay and Amazon and all of this, which means we'll then start to see more and more stock just become available and eventually show up in stores. To me, that's kind of when the generation's actually going to start, because Sony, while a lot of us were looking at it and saying, it's strange that so many of these first-party games from Sony are for the PS4 and the PS5, because they don't typically do that. However, it was a bit different because the architecture, obviously x86 and all of this, bit easier to do cross-gen there than when they were dealing with, okay, we're going to make this game for the cell processor, and we'd also be making it for the newer chipped x86 architecture we have in the PS4. You got to kind of pick one, and obviously, they had no problem running straight to the PlayStation 4 because that thing just absolutely took off. But with 2023 coming up here, I'm starting to think that is when we are going to see those PS4 logos and Xbox One logos completely drop off for any of these big game reveals outside of sports titles, and we should see Sony really make the push to the PS5, as until now with their cross-gen stuff, they have been doing a lot of PS4 and PS5 games for first party. I'm starting to think God of War Ragnarok's gonna be their last big game, like big budget that'll be on the previous system with their PlayStation 4 and their PlayStation 5, which I guess in hindsight now, based on how difficult it has been for them to get PS5 systems out there and how much money these games cost them to make, I mean, it probably was the right move to develop for the PS4, even though they did the whole "we believe in generations" thing and all of this. Sure, they did Ratchet and Clank. They did Destruction All-Stars. Yeah, sure. But then they also did Returnal. So it wasn't like they just did cross-gen stuff, but those games, clearly not the same kind of budget that we're seeing in things like Horizon Forbidden West or God of War that we have coming. Or even Gran Turismo. That game probably cost quite a bit of money to put out there. And then on Microsoft's side, they have been making the push to next gen here with things like Starfield and Redfall. Sure, that is, once again, falling into 2023, but that's sort of what I figured Microsoft would get things really spun up with all these studios they've been picking up, and alongside of them, Sony really making the push into next gen. And I think they're both going to have some showcases coming up here pretty soon that should set all of this in motion going into 2023, with a lot of PS5 and Xbox Series logos getting thrown all over the place, missing their last-gen counterparts. And hopefully that means we'll also see more and more of these systems get out there into actual gamers' hands and not into scalpers' living rooms. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Is 2023 finally going to be the time that we see this new generation really get started? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.